Something felt wrong in my own house. I couldn't explain it, but a mother knows. I pretended to leave for vacation and watched from far away. Then an old neighbor lady grabbed my hand and whispered, "When the clock strikes midnight, you'll see everything clearly." When midnight finally came, I couldn't believe my eyes. The truth made me fall to the ground. Before we start, please click subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The morning sun was bright as I walked into my kitchen. My fingers reached for the light switch. That's when I stopped moving. Something was different. Nothing big or obvious. No broken dishes or knocked over chairs. But after living here for 35 years, raising 3 kids in this house, I knew every corner, every scratch, every spot. The flower vase on the counter was moved 3 inches to the right. The kitchen towel hung differently. And my recipe box, the old wooden one my grandmother gave me, had tiny marks around the lock. My heart started beating fast. I put down my shopping bag carefully, trying not to panic. Instead, I walked around slowly, letting my eyes look at everything. The photo album I always kept on the left side of the shelf was now on the right. Papers in my desk drawer were mixed up instead of organized like I always keep them. Someone had looked through these things carefully, trying to put them back exactly where they were. Almost exactly, but not quite perfect. I bent down to look at the wooden box, my knees hurting a bit. The lock had small scratches on it. Someone who didn't know what they were doing tried to open it. Maybe with a paperclip or a fork. I pulled the drawer open. Everything was still there, but not in the right order. My old letters sat under the bills instead of on top. Bank papers had fingerprints on the edges that weren't mine. Maybe I did this myself and forgot. Maybe I moved things and didn't remember. I'm 62 years old after all. But even as I thought this, I knew it wasn't true. 30 years working as a school principal taught me to notice when something was wrong. My mind might be getting older, but it still worked just fine. Not yet anyway. I stood there in the quiet of my kitchen, holding a letter with someone else's fingerprints on it, and felt something change inside my chest. Not fear exactly, something colder. The same feeling that helped me catch students lying. Spot fake notes from parents, see through made-up stories. That feeling was loud in my head now. Question was who? Dinner that night gave me the answer without anyone saying it out loud. I sat in my usual chair at the table. My daughter Diane sat to my right. Her husband Marcus sat across from her. The chicken was too dry. Marcus never learned to cook like I taught Diane to, but I cut into it slowly, chewing carefully while they talked about boring things. Then Marcus cleared his throat. "Mom, I was thinking, have you looked at your will lately? Just to make sure everything is written down properly." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Put it down slowly. The sound of metal hitting the plate louder than it should be. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Her eyes jumped to Marcus, then back to me. "Too fast. Why are you asking?" "No special reason, just smart to plan ahead, you know." "Your age." "My age." I let those words hang there, watching Marcus's face turn red. "You see." Diane leaned forward, her smile warm, but her eyes were sharp. "Mom, we just want what's best. Having clear papers protects everyone. Stops confusion later." I took a sip of water, giving myself time to look at her carefully. She was good at hiding her feelings, better than Marcus. But I'd spent 30 years reading children's faces when they lied. Her left hand squeezed her fork too tight. I could see the muscles in her wrist. Confusion about what? She blinked, then smiled again smoothly. "Oh, you know, legal stuff. Marcus worries about you living alone in this big house." "Does he?" "Not a question." I picked up my fork again, started eating, let them think whatever they wanted from my silence. The rest of dinner felt like it took forever. I pretended to watch the evening news afterward while actually watching their reflections in the dark window behind the TV. They sat close on the couch, heads together, voices quiet. Diane touched Marcus's arm, either to comfort him or because they were planning something. Marcus nodded, looked toward me, then quickly looked away when he thought I might notice. They thought I was just watching television. They had no idea I was watching them instead. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly, unable to sleep. My daughter. My own daughter. The little girl I raised, taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, stood beside at her wedding, now sitting in my living room planning what? To say I couldn't think straight anymore. To take my house. The house was worth a lot of money now. Over $800,000 in this market. My life insurance was another $300,000. Savings accounts, the money my mother left me, my retirement funds. Plenty of reasons for someone who didn't want to wait. I got up before the sun came up, moving through the quiet house like a ghost. The mail sat where it always did by the front door. Marcus must have brought it in yesterday. I looked through the papers carefully. 3 envelopes had been opened and closed again with new tape. 2 important letters about my bank account that I was waiting for were missing. I pulled out my phone and checked the mail tracking app. Both missing letters showed they were delivered 4 days ago. My hands shook as I took pictures of the opened envelopes. Then I made my hands stop shaking through pure willpower. No room for feelings now. Only facts, watching, planning. Back in my kitchen, I stood in front of the broken lock on my recipe box and let the anger wash through me. Then I locked it away deep where it couldn't mess up my thinking. 30 years of watching people lie taught me one thing. Everyone gives themselves away somehow. Marcus always looked down when he was lying. Tonight he couldn't look at me for more than 3 seconds. The pieces were putting themselves together in my mind. Why? Money. How? Living in my house. What exactly? Still didn't know, but they'd clearly started gathering information, building something, thinking I was just a tired old woman who wouldn't notice her own life being stolen. I sat down in my kitchen chair and spoke quietly to the empty room. They think I'm just a tired old woman. They're going to learn what 30 years as a principal teaches you. How to read people, how to find evidence, and how to act when they least expect it. The plan started forming in my head right then. Not revenge, not yet. First I needed information. And to get information I needed to be invisible. I needed them to think I was out of the way. That they could do whatever they wanted. They wanted me gone. Fine, I'd disappear. But not the way they hoped. I pulled out a notebook and started making lists. Things I'd need, places I could watch from, people who might help me. My plan clicked into place like solving a puzzle. By the time the sun came up over the neighborhood, making long shadows across my kitchen floor, I knew exactly what I was going to do. They had opened a door into something dark, thinking they'd find a helpless old woman on the other side. Instead, they were going to find a principal who spent 3 decades dealing with liars. And this time, the punishment would be mine alone to give. 2 days of planning. 2 days of acting like I didn't know anything while making careful preparations. Now sitting at the breakfast table with Diane and Marcus, I was ready to set my trap. I spread butter on my toast slowly, took a long sip of coffee, then set the cup down casually. I've been thinking. That trip to see the mountains we always talked about. I'm going to do it. 2 weeks starting today. Marcus's fork fell on his plate with a clatter. Today. That's really sudden. I shrugged, reaching for the jam. I'm retired. No better time. Your father always wanted me to see the mountains. Figured I'd finally do it for him. The emotion in that last sentence was planned. True enough to sound real. Smart enough to throw them off. I watched them process it, saw the quick look they gave each other. Too quick, too full of meaning. Diane recovered first, leaning forward with fake warmth. That's wonderful, Mom. You deserve a break. Don't worry about anything here. Don't worry about anything here. The words hung in the air like a confession. I nodded slowly, looking at my plate as if thinking about the trip instead of reading her face. She was already planning. I could see it in the way her fingers drummed once on the table. A movement she couldn't control, showing her impatience. Are you sure you're okay driving alone? Marcus asked, trying to sound worried. It's a long trip for someone your age. He stopped talking, realizing he'd walked into a trap. For someone my age. I let a sharp edge into my voice, watching him flinch. I didn't mean to. I know you didn't, honey. I softened on purpose, giving him an easy way out. I'll be fine. Been driving these roads for 40 years. The relief on his face hurt to see. My own daughter. Glad I wasn't going to make this difficult for her. Glad for a chance to rob me. I spent the morning moving through the house carefully, acting like an excited traveler. Hiking boots from the closet, camera, maps of the mountains spread on the dining table. Each thing chosen to look real. But hidden among the travel stuff I packed other things. Special glasses that let you see in the dark. My old notebook still half empty. Small camera. The tools I needed hidden under the costume. At lunch, I spread the map on the table and traced my planned route with one finger while they leaned in pretending to care. I'll take the highway north, probably stop in Flagstaff the first night, then west to the mountains. Sounds perfect, Diane said, her eyes following my finger. But she wasn't looking at the route. She was looking at me, figuring out how long I'd be gone. 2 weeks should be enough, I continued. Maybe I'll stay longer if the weather's nice. It's been so long since I just existed somewhere without plans or schedules. Take all the time you need, Marcus said too quickly, too happily. The afternoon heat was terrible as I loaded the car. 105 degrees, the kind of summer day that made the air look wavy. I moved slowly, partly to look tired, partly because my back really did hurt. Cooler with ice and water, folding chair. Sleeping bag I wouldn't actually need but they'd expect to see. Marcus came out to help carry the heavier boxes. I let him, watching how his movements were stiff. Guilt and excitement fighting inside him. When everything was loaded, I turned to face him. He moved in for a hug and I held him for a moment, feeling how stiff he was. Take care of things here. I said quietly into his shoulder. We will, Mom. We will. Diane waited by the door, and I accepted her kiss on my cheek. Her perfume was expensive, newer than I remembered. Stronger. Bought with money she was already counting. The thought was bitter in my mind, but I kept my face neutral, even warm. Enjoy yourself, Mom. You've earned this. I climbed into the car, started the engine. They stood on the porch waving, their smiles too bright, their happiness too obvious. As I drove away, I watched them in my mirror. The moment they thought I couldn't see anymore, their faces changed. Marcus's arm went around Diane's waist. She said something that made him laugh. They were celebrating. 20 miles east, not north. The Sunrise Motel sat off Highway 60, the kind of place that took cash and didn't ask questions. I checked in using the name Helen Carter, a student I'd once helped years ago, long gone now, but I still remembered her details. The desk clerk barely looked at me. The room was exactly what I expected. Thin carpet, air conditioner that made loud noises, television attached to the dresser. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited for it to get dark. 3 hours. I ate a sandwich I'd packed, drank water, tried to rest but couldn't. My mind was already back at my house imagining what they were doing. Had they started already? Were they in my kitchen right now, looking through everything with no need to hide? The sun finally went down at 7:30, painting the sky orange and purple. I waited another 2 hours until it was completely dark. Then I drove back. Different roads this time. Side streets I knew from living in this neighborhood for decades. I parked 3 blocks away in the shadows under a big tree and walked carefully through the warm night. My knees hurt but I ignored them. The empty house across from mine had been for sale for 8 months. I'd walked past it many times, noticed the lockbox on the front door, remembered the code from the sign. 4732. My fingers found the buttons in the darkness, and the box clicked open. The house smelled like dust and loneliness, that special emptiness of a place waiting for someone to make it a home again. I moved through it without lights, letting my eyes adjust, finding the front bedroom with its clear view of my own house. Every window over there was bright with light. Both cars in the driveway. I set up my folding chair, opened it with a soft sound, pulled out the special glasses, raised them to my eyes, and there they were. Through my own living room window, I could see Marcus walking back and forth. Diane sat on the couch, phone against her ear. Big conversation I couldn't hear but could see in how she moved her hands. She was talking to someone, planning something. My heart stayed calm. My hands didn't shake. Instead, I felt that same cold clearness that used to come during difficult parent meetings when all the pieces finally fit together. The change was complete. I was no longer the target, no longer the victim being set up and used. I was the hunter now, and they had no idea I was watching. I adjusted the focus on the glasses, settling in for a long night. 30 years I'd spent watching people from my principal's desk, sorting truth from lies, right from wrong. Never thought I'd be watching them from an empty house across from my own home. Never thought one would be my own daughter. But here I was. And whatever they were planning, whatever they thought they'd get away with while I was gone, I was going to see every move, hear every word, write down every wrong thing. They wanted to erase me from my own life. Fine. I'd let them write the whole story, and then I'd show them what happens when you try to trick a principal. I raised the glasses to my eyes, focused on my own living room window, and waited to see who my daughter and son-in-law really were. 3 days of watching had left marks on me. Empty coffee cups lined the window of the empty house. Fast food bags filled a trash bag by the door. My back hurt from the folding chair. My eyes burned from hours behind the special glasses. But my mind stayed sharp. I'd written down every visitor, every light turned on or off, every movement through those windows across the street. But I hadn't seen enough yet. Diane and Marcus moved through my house with growing confidence. But whatever they were planning stayed just out of my reach. Then I heard footsteps on the porch. My hand shot toward my phone, ready to call police and explain why I was here before someone else did. The door opened slowly. I turned, practicing excuses, and froze. Mrs. Patterson stood in the doorway, her small frame outlined by the afternoon sun. She wore a gray sweater despite the heat, comfortable shoes, her white hair pulled back neatly. But what stopped me wasn't how she looked. It was the look on her face. No surprise, no confusion, just calm knowing. "I've been watching you watch them, Margaret." My throat tightened. "Mrs. Patterson, what are you doing here?" She stepped inside, closing the door behind her like she'd done this before. "Same thing you are, finding out the truth." "I don't know what you mean." The denial came automatically. Habit from years of being careful. Never admit what you don't have to. She moved to the window, stood beside my chair, and pointed toward my house with one thin finger. "That window upstairs, that's where I saw Diane taking pictures on Tuesday. Every room. Very careful and thorough." My hands squeezed the glasses tighter. "You've been watching my house. I've been watching your house for 40 years, Margaret. We've been neighbors that long." She pulled a small notebook from her sweater pocket, opened it to show neat handwriting, dates, times. "A man came Tuesday afternoon. Business suit, leather bag, stayed 45 minutes. I leaned forward without meaning to. "What did he look like?" "40s maybe. Dark hair, professional looking. He came back Thursday morning." Marcus let him in both times. "You're sure?" Her eyes met mine, sharp and clear. "I may be old, but my eyes work perfectly fine." I stood up, backing away from the window, trying to take control back. "This isn't your business." "Your family is stealing from you," she interrupted, her voice matter of fact. "That makes it everyone's business." The words hit like a punishment I'd been avoiding. "You don't know that." "Don't I?" She pointed at my setup. The special glasses, the notebook, the folding chair set up for hours of watching. "Then why are you hiding in an empty house watching your own home?" The silence stretched between us. Outside, a car drove past. Inside, the air conditioner rattled. Finally, I asked the only question that mattered. "What did you mean about midnight?" Mrs. Patterson turned back to the window, her face sharp against the light. "They think you're far away. They're getting comfortable. Tonight they'll make their real move." "How can you be sure?" She tapped her notebook with one finger. "Patterns. Tuesday and Thursday the man came during the day. Yesterday Marcus carried boxes to the garage after dark. They're building up to something. And you think it's tonight?" "I know it's tonight." She looked at me directly. "Trust me." Trust. The word felt strange. I'd spent 3 days alone with my suspicions, my shame, my anger. The idea of sharing any of it seemed impossible. This was my family, my failure, my fight. But she was already pulling a thermos from a bag I hadn't noticed. 2 cups, sandwiches wrapped in paper, setting up beside me like we'd planned this partnership all along. "Why are you doing this?" The question came out quieter than I meant. She paused, cup halfway to her lips. When she spoke, her voice carried something heavy. "Because I watched my own son steal from me before he died. I did nothing. I won't watch it happen to someone else." Something in my chest loosened. "Sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be ready." She handed me a cup of coffee. "When midnight comes, you'll need to see everything clearly. Both of us will." I took the coffee, went back to my spot by the window. She pulled up a second chair from somewhere I didn't ask about and sat beside me. We watched in silence as the afternoon turned to evening. The sky turned orange, then purple, then deep blue-black. Lights came on around the neighborhood. My house was brighter than all the others. Every window lit. Through the glass I could see Marcus walking back and forth in the living room. Diane on her phone, moving her hands as she talked. They were coordinating something with someone. The pieces were moving into place. Mrs. Patterson poured more coffee, offered me a sandwich. I ate without tasting it, my eyes never leaving those windows. Hours crawled past. 10 o'clock, 11. The neighborhood settled into sleep. Lights went dark house by house except mine. Marcus and Diane stayed awake, moving between rooms, checking phones, looking out windows, waiting. At 11:40, Mrs. Patterson touched my arm. My heart beat hard against my chest. 3 days of watching, and now the moment was coming. What would I see? How big was their plan? How complete was my daughter's betrayal? The questions circled in my mind like birds. Then at 11:47, headlights came down the street. Mrs. Patterson touched my arm again. "Here we go," she whispered. A black car slowed, turned into my driveway. Engine stopped, door opened. A man got out, business suit despite the hour, leather bag in hand. He checked his watch, looked around carefully like someone who knew being here this late was strange. My front door opened before he could knock. Marcus must have been watching for him. They talked briefly on the porch, voices too quiet to hear. Then both disappeared inside. The door closed. Through the living room window I could now see 3 people. I raised my glasses. Mrs. Patterson raised her phone. We didn't discuss our roles. We just fell into them naturally. Recording what happened, gathering evidence, building a case without saying the words. Through my living room window, I watched a meeting start at my own dining table. The man with the bag sat down. Marcus across from him. Diane appeared from the hallway carrying something I recognized right away. Blue, worn at the corners. The folder from my recipe box. My broken lock. My private papers. "That's him," Mrs. Patterson whispered. "That's Anderson." I lowered the glasses long enough to look at her. "You're certain?" I looked up his business license after his second visit. Robert Anderson Real Estate Deals. The name settled into my memory like important information filed away. Robert Anderson, real estate man, meeting in my house at midnight. With my daughter and son-in-law, with my private papers spread across my dining table. "Smart thinking," I said quietly. "Write everything down," she replied. "You'll need it later." I raised my phone and started taking pictures. The distance made some blurry. The window added reflection, but enough came through clear. Dated, time-stamped, proof that this meeting happened, that these people gathered, that my papers changed hands without me knowing or saying yes. 30 years of work as a principal had taught me one big truth. Facts matter more than feelings. Whatever I felt watching this scene, and the feelings tried to choke me, had to wait. Right now, only recording mattered. The meeting went on and on. Anderson looked at papers, holding them up to the light. Checking signatures, watermarks, making sure they were real. Marcus's body language screamed nervousness. Shoulders hunched, hands fidgeting, couldn't keep eye contact. But Diane sat still and confident, watching Anderson with the patience of someone certain of their position. Papers were signed. Hands shook across the table. Then Diane disappeared into the kitchen and came back with a bottle and 3 glasses. Champagne. A small celebration. They toasted. Anderson laughed at something Marcus said. They were celebrating in my house with my papers, planning my destruction over drinks. I lowered my phone. My hands shook, not from cold, but from fury held back by pure force of will. Mrs. Patterson's hand touched my shoulder briefly. "Keep taking pictures," she whispered. "Facts, not feelings." She was right. I raised the phone again, captured the toast, the smiles, the confidence on their faces. Every detail that would matter later when this ended up where I knew it would. In a courtroom. At 12:45, Anderson stood, gathered his bag. The three of them moved toward the front door. Mrs. Patterson and I quietly pushed the empty house window open wider. The warm night air carried sound better than I'd hoped. The street was silent except for distant highway noise. Anderson's voice reached us clearly. "If the power of attorney is real, we close by August 20th. Buyers offering $500,000 cash." The words landed like physical hits. Power of attorney. Closing date. Buyer. They weren't just planning to steal my house. They were actively selling it. Marcus's response made it worse. "It's real. My mother signed it months ago." The lie. The complete lie. Signed nothing. Given permission for nothing. Allowed none of this. "I'll need to check with the title company," Anderson continued. "But we're right on track." Diane's voice, smooth and confident. "Everything's in order. We've been planning this very carefully." Planning carefully. The words echoed in my mind. While I'd walked through my days trusting them, they'd been planning carefully, methodically, the theft of everything I'd built. The door closed. The car's engine started. Tail lights disappeared down the street. The neighborhood went back to silence, but nothing would ever be silent again in my mind. I stood at the window, phone in hand, photographs stored, evidence collected. Mrs. Patterson beside me. Her notebook full of times and descriptions. We'd seen it all, recorded it all. "He signed it months ago," I said, my voice barely controlled. "I signed nothing." "Forgery?" Mrs. Patterson asked. "Has to be. Question is how good a forgery." She looked at me seriously. "What will you do?" I turned from the window, feeling something settle inside me. The shock was gone. The denial was gone. Only cold certainty remained. Let them think they're succeeding. Then show them what happens when you underestimate a principle. Headlights came down the street at 11:47, exactly as Mrs. Patterson had predicted. The black car moved slowly, like the driver was making sure of the address in darkness. It pulled into my driveway, engine stopping with a click that carried across the silent street. I raised my glasses. Beside me, Mrs. Patterson got her phone ready. We'd been sitting at this window for hours, waiting for this moment. Now that it arrived, my heart pounded in my ears. The driver's door opened. Man got out. 40s, dark hair, business suit despite the midnight hour, leather bag in his right hand. He checked his watch like someone making sure they were on time for an appointment they'd rather not keep at this hour. His head turned left, then right, looking around the neighborhood carefully. "That's him," Mrs. Patterson whispered. "That's Anderson." I lowered the glasses long enough to glance at her. "You're certain?" I looked up his real estate license after his second visit. Robert Anderson, Commercial and Residential Property. The name filed itself in my memory like an important fact. Robert Anderson, Real Estate, Midnight Meeting. The pieces were connecting, making a picture I'd been dreading but needed to see completely. "Smart thinking," I said quietly, raising my phone to photograph the license plate. Mrs. Patterson wrote down the number in her notebook without me asking. We'd fallen into a partnership without planning it. Me taking pictures, her writing down details in careful handwriting. My front door opened before Anderson reached the porch. Marcus must have been watching from inside, waiting. They talked briefly, words I couldn't hear from this distance. Just quick words and nods. No handshake. This was business, not friendly. Marcus stepped aside. Anderson went in. The door closed behind them. Through the living room window I could now see three people. I adjusted the glasses, bringing the scene into clear view. They were moving toward my dining table. Anderson set his bag down. Marcus pulled out chairs. Diane appeared from the direction of my kitchen, and my stomach twisted. She carried the blue folder. "That folder," I said, my voice hollow. "The blue one? That's from my box." Mrs. Patterson leaned closer. "What's in it?" "Property papers, original will, bank documents, everything they'd need to steal it all." The words tasted like poison. I raised my phone and started photographing. The distance challenged the camera, about 60 yards across the street, and the window added glare, but enough images came through clear. Anderson sitting at the head of my dining table. Marcus to his right, posture stiff with tension even from here. Diane laying papers across the surface with organized precision. This was really happening. In my house. My table. With my papers. Mrs. Patterson wrote constantly in her notebook. Time 11:52. 3 people visible through front window. Papers, multiple documents spread on dining surface. Activity, obvious business meeting. Her background as a nurse showed in how exact her observations were. Symptoms recorded, evidence collected, no emotional words, just facts. Through the glasses I watched Anderson pick up papers one by one. He held several up to the light, checking watermarks, I realized, making sure they were real. He'd done this before, knew what to look for in real paperwork. The professional checking should have comforted me. Instead it scared me. If the fake was good enough to pass that inspection, proving it was false would be much harder. Marcus's body language screamed discomfort. He kept moving in his chair, fingers tapping the table edge, eyes jumping between Anderson and Diane. Guilt showed in every movement. But he didn't stop, didn't stand up and end this, just sat there helping with his own shame. Diane, by contrast, sat perfectly still, confident. When Anderson asked questions, I could see his mouth moving, hands moving with his words. She answered with small movements, a nod, a short response, the economy of motion that comes from being sure. She believed this would work, that they'd covered everything, that I'd never know or never be able to stop it. The meeting stretched to 20 minutes, 30, 40. My legs went numb from sitting still. My shoulder hurt from holding the phone steady for pictures, but I didn't move. Couldn't. This was evidence happening in real time. Every second mattered. At some point, papers slid across the table. Marcus signed something, then Diane. Their pens moved across pages I couldn't see clearly enough to identify. But I photographed each moment, time-stamped proof of signatures given, agreements made, fraud committed, because that's what this was. I'd signed nothing, given permission for nothing. Every signature on those papers in my name had to be fake. Anderson gathered papers into his bag, stood, held out his hand. Marcus shook it, then Diane. A business deal finished to everyone's satisfaction. Then Diane disappeared toward the kitchen. "They're celebrating," Mrs. Patterson whispered. My jaw clenched. "They think they've won. They don't know you're watching. They don't know a lot of things yet." The words came out harder than I meant. Mrs. Patterson glanced at me. "What are you planning?" "Justice." Diane came back carrying a bottle and 3 glasses. Champagne. I recognized the shape even through the window. She poured dramatically, handed glasses to Marcus and Anderson. They raised them together. A toast to what? To stealing my life. To their cleverness. To the $500,000 they thought they'd soon have. I lowered my phone. My hands shook with fury I barely controlled. Every feeling screamed to run across the street, throw open the door, confront them with their betrayal. But 30 years as a principal had taught me better. Emotional reactions got dismissed. Evidence got convictions. Right now I needed evidence more than satisfaction. "Keep taking pictures." Mrs. Patterson's voice reached me through the red haze. "Facts, not feelings." I raised the phone again, captured the champagne toast, the smiles. Anderson laughing at something Marcus said. The comfortable conspiracy of people who believe themselves safe. At 12:45, Anderson set down his glass. The meeting was ending. They moved toward the front door, out of my view through the window. I lowered the glasses and looked at Mrs. Patterson. She was already moving, going to the empty house's front window, the one that faced the street directly. Followed. She opened it just a little. The warm night air flowed in, still 90 degrees even at this hour, carrying the smell of hot pavement and desert plants. The front door of my house opened. They stepped onto the porch. Anderson first, bag in hand, then Marcus and Diane behind him. The porch light lit them clearly. 50 yards away now, closer than before. In the silent neighborhood their voices carried. If the power of attorney is real, we close by August 20th. Anderson's voice, professional and businesslike. Buyers offering $500,000 cash. The words hit me like a verdict being read. Power of attorney. Closing date. Sale. They weren't just planning, they were doing it. This was real, active, already moving forward. It's real, Marcus's voice trying for confidence but landing near desperation. My mother signed it months ago. The lie. The complete lie. Sign nothing. No power of attorney, no permission to sell, no allowing any action about my property. The document had to be fake. The question was whether it would fool the title company. I'll need to check with the title company, Anderson said, answering my unspoken question. But we're on track. Diane's voice cut through, smooth and certain. Everything's in order. We've been planning this very carefully. Carefully. The word echoed in my mind. While I'd walked my neighborhood, read my books, trusted my daughter, they'd been planning carefully, methodically, probably for months. The break-in to my kitchen wasn't the beginning. It had been part of something already well underway. Handshakes were exchanged, brief goodbyes. Anderson walked to his car, started the engine. Red lights glowed as he backed down the driveway, then disappeared down the street. Marcus and Diane stayed on the porch a moment, watching him go. Then they turned to each other. Marcus said something I couldn't hear. Diane laughed, a sound that carried clearly in the night air, musical and triumphant. They went back inside. The door closed. Lights in the living room went dark. They were going to bed. The night's work complete. Tomorrow they'd wake up one step closer to stealing everything I'd built. I stood at the open window, phone in hand, photographs stored, dozens of images, time-stamped evidence. Mrs. Patterson beside me. Her notebook filled with exact observations. We had records, witnesses, proof. But records weren't enough. I needed to understand the whole plan, know every player, map every move before I struck back. He signed it months ago, I said quietly, testing the words. I signed nothing. Forgery, Mrs. Patterson asked. Has to be. Question is how good a forgery. If it passes the title company's checking, proving it. False becomes much harder. What will you do? I turned from the window, feeling the last bits of shock burn away. What stayed was cold clarity, principle focus. 3 decades of looking at evidence, building cases, finding truth in what people said and in papers. All of that experience turned into one single purpose now. Let them think they're succeeding, I said. Let them believe I'm still in Arizona somewhere looking at mountain views. Let them take every step they've planned. I'll write it all down. Then when they think they've won, I'll show them what happens when you try to trick a principal. Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly. You'll need a lawyer, someone who knows about this kind of thing. Have someone in mind. David Chen practiced law for years. He owes me for helping his daughter when she had trouble in school. When will you act? Not yet. Not until I have everything. They mentioned August 20th closing. That gives me 3 weeks to build a case they can't escape from. I looked back toward my house, now mostly dark except for the porch light. They're going to close, sign all the papers, take the money. Then I'm going to take it all away and send them to jail for it. Mrs. Patterson was quiet for a moment. Then, you know what this means. You'll have to take your own daughter to court. The words hung between us. I'd been avoiding that truth, keeping it at the edges of my mind. But she was right. This path led to criminal charges. Fraud, forgery, theft. If I saw this through, Diane would face jail time. My daughter, the little girl I'd raised, taught to read, helped with school projects, stood beside at her wedding. I looked at Mrs. Patterson, and when I spoke my voice was steady. She made her choice when she decided to steal from me. I'm making mine when I decide to stop her. She nodded once, accepting that. What do you need from me? Keep watching when I can't be here. Write down anything unusual. Be ready to tell your story if it comes to that. Can do that. We stood together in the darkness of the empty house. Two old women watching the night take back its silence. Across the street my home sat still. Inside my daughter and her husband slept peacefully, sure of their plan. They had no idea their celebration was too early. The principal was back at work. And school was about to begin. Morning broke over the neighborhood. Orange light coming through the motel room's thin curtains. I sat on the edge of the bed, still dressed from watching all night. Phone in my hand showing photographs from the midnight meeting. Beside me, Mrs. Patterson's notebook lay open to her exact observations, times, descriptions, Robert Anderson's words written in her neat handwriting. I hadn't slept, couldn't. My mind kept going back to those heard phrases. 500,000. August 20th. Power of attorney. Marcus's voice saying, "My mother signed it months ago." The lie echoed in my head like a hammer hitting wood. But knowing they were selling wasn't enough. I needed to see the papers themselves, understand how their trick was built. A case built on watching alone was weak. I needed the smoking gun, the fake signature, the false paperwork, the proof that would stand up in any courtroom. I stood, poured cold coffee from the pot I'd made hours ago, and started planning. 3 days. I spent 3 days studying their patterns from my watching spot across the street. Marcus left for his downtown office every morning at 8:30 like a clock. Diane went shopping on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Scottsdale Fashion Square, usually gone at least 2 hours based on when her car came back. Today was Thursday, August 3rd. My window of opportunity. I watched from my car parked 2 blocks down, baseball cap pulled low. Marcus's silver car backed out of the driveway at 8:27. Routine, predictable. 43 minutes later, Diane's black car followed. Her sunglasses catching the morning light as she checked her reflection in the mirror before driving away. I waited 10 more minutes, long enough to be certain they wouldn't come back for forgotten purses or phones. Then I drove to my own house, parked in the driveway like I belonged there because I did, and pulled out my key. The lock turned smoothly. My own house, my own door. Yet my hands shook slightly as I pushed it open. Inside, the air conditioning hummed. The television played quietly in the living room, making it seem like someone was home probably. I stood in my own entryway feeling like a stranger, and the wrongness of that feeling hardened something in my chest. The spare bedroom, my former sewing room, had been turned into Marcus's temporary office. I'd seen him working in there through the windows during watching. Now I opened the door and stepped inside. The desk held the usual mess of modern work: laptop, papers, coffee-stained notepad. I opened drawers one by one. Bank statements, work papers, insurance documents. Then the bottom drawer. And there it was. The blue folder from the midnight meeting with Anderson. It wasn't even hidden well, just sitting there under some manila envelopes, like they'd grown so sure of themselves they didn't bother hiding it properly. The arrogance of it made my jaw clench. I spread the contents across the desk surface. Power of attorney document dated June 15th. My signature at the bottom, except it wasn't my signature. Close, very close. Someone had studied my handwriting carefully. But the pressure was wrong. The loop on the M in Margaret didn't quite match, and most obvious, the ink looked newer than the paper. Close, I said out loud, photographing it from multiple angles. But the M in Margaret, I loop it differently. And the date ink, sloppy work. Probably an online fake service, the kind that advertised on shady websites. They'd say I was losing my memory if challenged, that I had signed but forgotten. It wouldn't work. Not against evidence I was collecting. I photographed every page. The power of attorney, the early sales agreement with buyer Thomas Williams from California. Closing date August 20th. Purchase price confirmed, $500,000 cash sale. Then as I was about to put everything back, printed pages slipped from between 2 folders. Email printouts. I almost missed them. The first line froze me in place. Jake, once the sale closes, I'll have my half. 250,000. Enough to start fresh. I read while standing there, phone forgotten in my hand. Diane's emails to someone in Los Angeles. Plans detailed with brutal efficiency. After closing, she'd take the kids, leave Marcus, move to California where this Jake person waited. Marcus believed they were buying a new condo in Scottsdale together. He had no idea she was leaving him the moment the money transferred. Marcus thinks we're buying a condo here. He has no idea I'm leaving. My daughter was using him. Tool, something to throw away when done. The realization should have brought satisfaction, evidence of karma perhaps. Instead it just made the hollow ache in my chest deeper. Betrayal all the way down. Her betraying me, her betraying him. Everyone using everyone. But it didn't change anything. He'd chosen this path, made his decisions. That he was also a victim of her games didn't erase his actions against me. I photographed the emails, every page, every terrible word. Then carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. The folder back in the drawer, angled the same direction. The emails between the manila envelopes. The desk surface cleared of any sign of my presence. Walking through the house one final time, I let myself really look at it. Built 35 years ago, every corner familiar. The kitchen where I'd taught Diane to make cookies. The living room where we'd watched movies together. The hallway where pictures still hung. My late husband's smile. Diane's graduation. Family vacations that now felt like they'd happened to different people. Memories poisoned by present betrayal. I left through the back door, cut through the neighbor's yard to where my car waited 2 blocks over, and drove back to the motel without looking in the mirror. In the motel room I spread everything out. Phone connected to laptop, moving photographs over. Mrs. Patterson's notebook checked against my new evidence. The picture was complete now. Not just guesses or scene meetings but proof, documentation, the kind that survived challenges and questioning. I called Mrs. Patterson from the car, voice steadier than I felt. Have everything. Papers, evidence, proof of forgery. You went inside. Her concern was immediate. My house, my evidence. They're selling it August 20th. Oz. Then what's your next move? I stopped being the one reacting. Time to build a case. After hanging up, I sat alone in the motel room with photos shown across the laptop screen. The fake signature, the sales agreement, Diane's emails planning her escape, Marcus's temporary office that screamed of someone living in waiting space, preparing for a future he didn't realize would never come. They'd wanted to play games with a principal. Fine. School was now in session. I opened a legal pad and started making lists. Steps needed, evidence to gather, legal people to contact. This wasn't about feelings anymore. This was about building a case they couldn't escape. The kind I'd spent 30 years helping build as a principal working with police and courts. And I never saw cases fail where evidence was this clear. I stared at the fake signature on my screen, at the careful but flawed copy of my handwriting, and felt the last bits of pain burn away into something colder, purer. They'd made me the hunter. Now they'd learn what that meant. Tomorrow I'd start building the legal wall that would crush them. Tonight I organized evidence and planned strategy with the exactness of someone who'd done this for 3 decades. Let them think they still had time. Let them believe the closing would happen smoothly. Let them pack their bags and count their expected money. The trap works best when prey doesn't see it until too late. I stared at my laptop screen until the photographs blurred together. Evidence, forgery, betrayal. The words had become medical, separated from the personal destruction they represented. This was better. Emotion clouded thinking. I needed the clarity that came from treating this like any other case I dealt with. Except this time I was victim, investigator, and principal rolled into one. The legal pad beside the laptop filled with notes as I researched Arizona real estate law, trust structures, forgery punishments. Coffee cups piled up on the nightstand. Outside the desert sun climbed higher, but in the motel room I barely noticed. This was what I'd done for 30 years. Build cases so tight they couldn't be escaped. By evening I had my strategy. The next morning I dressed in a full pantsuit for the first time since this began. Navy blue, conservative blouse, polished shoes. Looking in the bathroom mirror, I saw Principal Margaret returning. Not the confused homeowner. Not the devastated mother. The woman who'd led a school for hundreds of students, who'd built a reputation on careful preparation and devastating questioning. I packed my evidence folder in a briefcase and drove into Central Scottsdale. Linda Martinez's notary office sat in a small storefront between an insurance place and a coffee shop. I'd known her 12 years through the school system. She handled document checking for countless cases. Professional, quiet, thorough. She looked up from her desk as I entered, recognition followed by concern crossing her face. "Margaret, I heard you were traveling. Change of plans." I sat across from her and slid a handwritten statement across the desk. "I need this notarized and filed." She read it slowly, eyes getting wider. When she looked up, questions hung unspoken, but she asked none of them. "This says you never signed a power of attorney." "Correct." "Never made one. Never gave permission to anyone to act for me about my property." "If someone's using fake papers, that's exactly what's happening," I interrupted. Her expression changed from concern to something harder, professional anger maybe. "This creates a legal record. You understand what this means." "I'm counting on what it means." She typed the official version, had me sign under oath, put her notary stamp on it with careful precision. The stamp's thud sounded like a hammer hitting wood. She printed multiple copies. One for me, one for her records, one for the county recorder. "This is serious, Margaret." "No." She handed me the certified copies, and our eyes met. 30 years of mutual respect squeezed into that moment. She wouldn't ask questions I couldn't answer. I wouldn't explain more than necessary. The document spoke for itself. Foundation laid. From the notary I drove directly to Desert Community Bank. The marble lobby felt too cold, air conditioning fighting the August heat. Samuel Brooks, branch manager, stood up from his desk when he saw me. We'd known each other 18 years. He'd handled my account since he was a new employee fresh out of college. "Margaret, thought you were at the mountains. Shorten the trip." I settled into the chair across from his desk. "I need to put a formal hold on any real estate deals involving my property." His expression changed immediately to professional concern. "A transaction hold requires serious cause. Attempted fake sale, papers with forged permission." He frowned, fingers already moving toward his keyboard. "You're certain? 30 years as a principal teaches you to recognize fake signatures." "I'm certain." He typed quickly, paused to read something on screen, typed more. "Hold placed immediately. No transfers without you physically here. Photo ID checked. Verbal confirmation recorded." He printed the confirmation, stamped it with bank seal, handed it across. "Sorry you're dealing with this." I took the paperwork, feeling another wall slide into place. "Appreciate the quick action, Samuel. Always." He shook my hand firmly. "Let me know if you need anything else." Second barrier built. After a quick lunch I didn't taste, I drove to North Scottsdale to the office of Rebecca Stone, trust and estate attorney. Expensive but necessary. I'd researched her credentials the night before. 12 years specializing in asset protection, excellent reputation, no connection to Diane or Marcus that might hurt privacy. Her office was all polished wood and leather furniture, the kind of place that announced skill and cost. She listened to my carefully edited explanation. Concerned homeowner wanting asset protection. No mention of family, no details about forgery. Just a woman who wanted her property secured. "Irrevocable living trust is your best option," she said after I finished. "Asset protection, avoiding probate, complete control kept by you as trustee. How quickly can this be set up?" "I can write it today, file with the county by end of business." She opened her laptop, fingers flying across keys. Date of establishment. This was the crucial moment. June 1st. She didn't question it. Client choice. She wrote the trust papers over the next 2 hours while I waited, reviewing each section with me, explaining things I already understood but let her detail anyway. Professional courtesy. This means you can't easily undo it. Caution. You're sure? I need asset protection, absolute protection. May I ask what's making this urgent? I kept my voice measured, showing nothing. Let's say I've learned that family doesn't always mean safety. Understanding flickered across her face. She'd seen this before probably. Estate planning often showed family problems. The trust will give you that protection. She finished the papers, had me sign in multiple places, notarized them herself, and filed electronically with Maricopa County that afternoon. By 4 o'clock, my house legally existed within an unbreakable trust with me as sole trustee. Which meant Marcus's fake power of attorney, dated after the trust was made, was worthless. You can't sell property you don't control, and he didn't control property in a trust. The legal trap had closed before they even knew it existed. I paid her $3,000, money well spent, and drove back to the motel feeling the pieces lock into place. That evening I transformed the motel room into a command center. Papers spread across every surface. Bed, desk, small table by the window. I organized evidence into labeled folders. Folder 1. Watching photos and Mrs. Patterson's dated observations. Folder 2. Fake papers and comparison signature analysis. Folder 3. Notarized statement and legal preventive measures. Folder 4. Mrs. Patterson's formal witness statement. Folder 5. Trust papers proving ownership structure existed before forgery. I photographed everything, made copies. One set stayed with me. Tomorrow I'd place a second set in a safe deposit box. The third would go to Mrs. Patterson for safekeeping. Nothing left to chance. I called her from the motel, voice calm despite the energy still humming through my system. Legal framework is in place. Properties in trust, banks locked down, forgeries documented. When will you confront them, she asked. August 20th, at the closing table. Oz. Why wait? Maximum impact. Let them think they've won, then watch their world fall apart in public. That's cold, Margaret. That's justice. After we hung up, I sat surrounded by evidence folders, staring at the organization I'd created. Case files, everything labeled, cross-referenced, time-stamped. The kind of preparation that destroyed defendants. They chose lying, I said quietly to the empty room. Forgery, theft from family. I paused, staring at the photo of the fake signature on my laptop screen. The careful but flawed copy of my handwriting. The arrogance of thinking they could fool me. I choose law, evidence, consequences they can't run from. I closed the folder with finality, feeling something settle in my chest. Not peace, not satisfaction, just cold certainty. 12 days until closing. 12 days until they walked into that room thinking they'd won, only to discover every paper they'd faked, every lie they'd told, every dollar they'd counted had been expected, recorded, turned into weapons against them. The legal fortress was complete, unreachable, devastating. Now I just needed to go home and watch them walk into it. Tomorrow I'd return from my vacation. Let them think they still had time. Let them relax into false confidence. Let them believe the hard part was over. The trap works best when prey doesn't see it until too late. And I'd spent 30 years learning exactly how to set traps that never failed. My car turned into the driveway on August 10th, just after 2 in the afternoon. The Arizona sun burned overhead, same as always. The lawn looked freshly watered, edges trimmed with care. My house sat exactly as I'd left it 2 weeks ago. Except everything was different now. I knew what lived inside those walls. The planning, the betrayal, the midnight meetings and fake papers. I knew and they didn't know I knew. That imbalance of information was the final weapon in my arsenal. Through the windshield I watched the front curtain move. Someone had seen me arrive. But let them panic while pretending everything was normal. I grabbed my suitcase from the car, moved slowly toward the door like any tired traveler coming back from a failed vacation. My keys fumbled slightly, planned clumsiness. The lock turned. I pushed the door open and called out, "I'm home." Trip didn't work out. Marcus appeared from the kitchen within seconds, his face frozen in surprise before muscle memory forced a smile into place. "Mom, you're back early. Everything okay?" Behind him, Diane came down the stairs, her eyes calculating distances and timelines. 4 days early. Not what they'd planned. But the closing was still scheduled for Friday. They still thought they had time. I set down my luggage with exaggerated tiredness. Altitude got to me. Headaches. Figured I'd be more comfortable here. "That's too bad." Diane's voice carried perfect fake sympathy. "But probably smart to come home." I looked around my own living room as if seeing it fresh. Good to be back. Miss my own bed. They exchanged a glance, quick, loaded with meaning. I pretended not to catch. Relief mixed with recalculation. I shuffled toward my bedroom, saying I needed to check mail, and they let me go. Inside the bedroom I scanned quickly. Everything appeared untouched, though I knew they'd gone through it weeks ago. The recipe box locks still had scratches from their break-in. I ran my finger over the damage, memorizing details for future testimony, then went back to the living room. That evening's dinner became a battle of minds. Marcus launched his attack disguised as concern. "Mom, I've been meaning to say, you seem a bit forgetful lately." I paused mid-bite, fork held still, set it down with careful control. "Forgetful how?" "Little things. Misplacing items, confusion about dates." Diane leaned forward, voice dripping support. "It's natural at your age. Maybe see a doctor just to be safe." My hand slipped into my pocket, found my phone, pressed record. Every word would be captured now. "I suppose I have been a bit scattered. Nothing to worry about." Marcus's relief was visible. "Just want you taken care of." I saw what they were building. The foundation for their defense when the forgery was discovered. Old woman didn't know what she was signing. Memory loss, confusion, mental decline. They were creating their escape route, not realizing they were actually building evidence of knowing guilt. I let uncertainty show on my face, touched my forehead as if trying to remember something. "Do I really seem that confused?" "Not confused," Diane corrected smoothly. "Just tired. You've been through a lot." The next day at lunch she set the real trap. "Mom, remember those papers from last month? Legal documents." I wrinkled my forehead, appearing to strain for memory. "Papers. What papers?" "Power of attorney forms. You signed them for Marcus to help with finances." My confusion was genuine. I'd never signed any such thing. But to them my blank expression read as memory loss. "Did I sign something?" "Can't, it's fuzzy." Marcus jumped in quickly. "It's fine, Mom. Don't stress. Just routine paperwork." I appeared relieved. "If you say so." My memory isn't what it was. The triumph that flashed across Diane's face was barely hidden. Marcus relaxed visibly. They believed they'd successfully planted reasonable doubt about my mental state. They thought they were building an unbeatable defense. Instead, every word was being recorded. Every false claim of memory loss, every attempt to make confusion. Evidence that they knew the power of attorney was fake and were trying to create cover after the fact. That evening after they'd gone to their wing of the house, I sat in my bedroom with earbuds in, listening to the recordings. Marcus's voice, "Mom, you're confused lately." Diane's voice, "Those papers you signed last month." I connected the phone to my laptop, saved the files with timestamps, burned copies to a USB drive, emailed encrypted versions to Rebecca Stone with a subject line, "Evidence of knowing intent, August 10th to 11th, 2025. Later that night I passed their bedroom door and heard their voices through the gap. "He doesn't even remember signing." Marcus's voice low and relieved. "Perfect. If he challenges anything we cite mental decline." "You think he'll challenge it?" "He won't know until it's done." 3 more days, then we're clear. Then we're free. I stood in the darkened hallway recording their conversation on my phone. They had no idea I was there. No idea every word was evidence. No idea the trap had already closed around them. Back in my bedroom, I opened my laptop and typed a message to Rebecca Stone. "They've taken the bait, building story of mental decline." Her response came within minutes. "Recordings crystal clear. Evidence of knowing guilt. See you Friday 2 p.m. This will be decisive. I stared at the screen, feeling nothing but cold certainty. They have no idea what's waiting. 3 days crawled past. I kept up the performance perfectly. Confused, forgetful, harmless. Asked Diane to repeat simple things. Paused before answering basic questions. Let them see what they wanted to see. An old woman losing her grip, unable to remember what she'd signed, incapable of mounting legal challenges. Each morning I watched them grow more confident. Each evening I reviewed my evidence, adding their new lies to the growing file. Friday morning arrived. I dressed in my principal suit. Navy blue, perfect tie at my neck, shoes polished to shine. Picked up my leather briefcase, the one I'd carried for 30 years as a principal. Inside, organized folders, each labeled, each containing evidence that would destroy them. I walked into the kitchen where they sat over coffee. Have some errands to run. Be back later. They smiled, relieved. Probably thought I was going to the store or post office. Harmless old woman activities. In 4 hours they'd be at the escrow office expecting to sign away my home and collect $500,000. Instead they'd face the consequences of betraying a principal. I drove toward Scottsdale with the calm focus of a prosecutor about to present an unbeatable case. No worry, no doubt. Just the certainty that comes from 3 decades of work experience and evidence so solid it could survive any challenge. They'd wanted to play games. Fine. School was now in session. And I never saw cases fail where the evidence was this clear. Sunshine Escrow sat on the 2nd floor of a modern office building in North Scottsdale. Through the glass walls of the conference room I could see them gathered around the table. At 1:50, Robert Anderson sat at the head, organizing papers with practiced efficiency. Marcus and Diane sat on the left side, dressed professionally, nervous energy barely contained. Thomas Williams, the California buyer, sat on the right side. Distinguished man, silver hair, expensive suit. Jennifer Lopez, the escrow officer, arranged paperwork at the far end. Everything proceeding normally. Just another real estate closing. Check my watch. 2 exactly. Rebecca Stone stood beside me in the hallway, her own briefcase in hand. Ready. I've been ready for 2 weeks. I opened the conference room door. All heads turned. The conversations died instantly. I saw Marcus's face lose all color. Saw Diane half stand from her chair before catching herself. Anderson looked confused. Williams looked annoyed. Lopez looked concerned. I walked to the empty end of the table, Stone behind me. Didn't remove my jacket. Set my briefcase down with a decisive click that echoed in the suddenly silent room. Good afternoon. My voice carried the authority of 3 decades as a principal. I'm Margaret Chen, actual owner of the property you're attempting to purchase. Margaret. Dan stood now. What are you doing here? I ignored her, spoke to Lopez directly. This deal cannot go forward. The power of attorney you're relying on is fake. Marcus's voice shook. Mom, this isn't. Be quiet, Marcus. I opened my briefcase, removed the first folder. Red tab labeled statement. Walked around the table, placed it directly in front of Lopez. I'm presenting evidence now. She opened it, started reading. I went back to my briefcase. Here's my sworn statement that I never made any power of attorney, never gave permission to anyone to conduct deals involving my property. I removed the second folder, blue tab. Stone took this one, handed it to Lopez. Ms. Chen's property was transferred into an unbreakable living trust on June 1st, 1 month before the claimed power of attorney date. Stone's voice was professional, exact. As sole trustee, Ms. Chen is the only person authorized to conduct deals involving this property. Here's the county filing. Lopez looked at the papers, checking dates, reviewing filing stamps, looked up at Anderson. Did you check trust status before proceeding? Anderson's face went red. The power of attorney appeared real, standard documentation. Standard would include a title search revealing the trust. Stone interrupted. Williams stood suddenly. You told me this was clean. Diane tried to regain control. This is a misunderstanding. Margaret signed but is confused. Memory. Pulled out my phone. Let me clear up my memory. This recording is from 2 days ago. I tapped the screen twice. Diane's voice filled the room, clear and damning. If he challenges anything, we cite mental decline. Marcus's voice. 3 more days, then we're clear. Diane again, then we're free. I stopped the playback. The silence was absolute. Does that sound like someone who innocently believed I signed papers? I removed the 3rd folder, black tab labeled evidence. Opened it so everyone could see. Watching photographs, timestamps. Your midnight meeting with Mr. Anderson on August 2nd. The papers spread across my dining table. Marcus signing documents. Diane presenting my private files from my broken box. I swiped through photos on my phone, then showed them on my laptop screen for everyone to see. Each image time-stamped, each one undeniable. Williams leaned forward, studied the photos, then turned to Anderson with disgust. This is fraud. I'm calling my attorney. I was given fake papers. Anderson's voice rose. They misrepresented. We didn't know. Marcus started. You broke into my box. My voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Faked my signature. Met with Mr. Anderson at midnight while you thought I was away. You knew exactly what you were doing. Diane's face hardened into defiance. You can't prove. I opened the 4th folder, green tab. Comparison signature analysis. My real signature versus the forgery. Note the pressure differences. The loop formation on the M in Margaret. The ink age difference. I laid it on the table where everyone could see. What can I prove? Lopez closed her file folder with finality. This closing cannot go forward. I'm required to report suspected fraud to authorities. Williams was already gathering his things. Anderson, you assured me the documentation was checked. I'll be speaking with my attorney about your carelessness. Marcus found his voice finally. Mom, please. We can fix this. Just talk to us. I started collecting my folders, putting them back in my briefcase in perfect order. I spent 30 years deciding consequences for people who broke the rules. That doesn't change because you're my daughter. I'm still your family. I paused, looked at her directly across the table, held her eyes until she looked away. You stopped being my family when you tried to steal my home. Now you're just criminals. I closed my briefcase with the same decisive click as opening, looked at Lopez. You'll have my cooperation with any investigation. To Williams, I apologize. You were pulled into this. Don't open the door. I walked through it without looking back. Behind us, voices erupted. Blaming, panic, finger-pointing. Marcus called my name once. I didn't turn around. In the elevator, Stone spoke quietly. That was devastating. That was justice. What's next? Police station to file criminal reports, then the bank to secure new accounts, then home to change the locks. I watched the floor numbers go down. They're not welcome anymore. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. Bright Arizona sunlight poured through the glass walls. I walked out into it, Stone beside me, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The house was mine again. The battle was won. Now came the consequences they had earned. I climbed into my car, set the briefcase on the passenger seat, and pulled out of the parking lot. In my mirror, I could see the office building getting smaller. Inside that conference room, their world was collapsing. Plans destroyed, money gone, criminal charges coming. I'd spent 30 years as a principal teaching that actions have consequences. That justice, while sometimes slow, eventually finds its target. That betrayal of trust, especially family trust, carries the heaviest punishments. Today Marcus and Diane had learned that lesson in the hardest way possible. I drove toward the police station, my evidence folders organized and ready. This wasn't revenge. This was accountability. This was the law working as designed. Protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Punishing those who thought they were clever enough to escape consequences. They'd underestimated a principle. That was their first mistake. Thinking I wouldn't fight back was their second. Now they'd spend years learning from both. Detective Carlos Martinez sat across from me at the Scottsdale Police Department, reviewing my evidence folder. Rebecca Stone waited beside me as I laid out the case. Fake power of attorney. I slid the document across. Signature analysis shows differences. Watching photos from the midnight meeting with Anderson. Audio recordings of them discussing how they'd claim I was mentally impaired. I played Diane's voice. If he challenges anything, we cite mental decline. Martinez's expression hardened. Miss Chen, you're accusing your own daughter of major fraud. I'm reporting a crime that happens to involve my daughter. Some mothers would let this go. Some mothers didn't spend 30 years upholding rules. I'm not that mother. Over the following week, Marcus confessed during questioning, admitted knowing participation. Diane denied everything until shown her California emails, then blamed Marcus entirely. They were turning on each other. She filed for divorce this morning, Martinez informed me. She was planning to leave him anyway. Stone filed civil suits at the same time. $80,000 for damages. They'll likely never pay it, she warned. The judgment follows them forever. That's the point. The removal hearing came August 27th. Judge Patricia Lee, my former colleague from the school district, heard the evidence and ruled quickly. Removal granted, 10 days to leave. September 1st, moving day. I watched from my bedroom as they loaded a rental truck. When nearly finished, Marcus came to the door alone. Mom, please give me another chance. I studied the man who'd broken into my box, faked my signature. You made planned choices, Marcus. You chose this path. You're my mother. I was your mother. You made me a victim instead. I closed the door, locked it, changed all the locks. That afternoon the criminal case moved toward sentencing. 15 months probation for Marcus. 18 months for Diane. Permanent records. Lasting consequences. September 18th arrived. I dressed in my principal suit and drove downtown to watch my daughter receive her judgment. Maricopa County Superior Court felt different from the public side. For 30 years I'd worked with courts through my school. Now I passed through metal detectors, found courtroom 3C, took a seat in the gallery. Marcus and Diane sat at separate defense tables. Neither turned to see me. Judge Patricia Lee entered. "All rise." The clerk called the case. Marcus stood first, voice barely heard. "Guilty, Your Honor." Diane followed, stronger but defiant. "Guilty." Lee read portions of my victim impact statement out loud. For 30 years I upheld rules as a school principal. They broke into my box, faked my signature, attempted to steal my home while I slept under its roof. The relationship doesn't excuse the crime. It makes it worse. The silence was total. This court takes family fraud seriously, Lee continued. You exploited trust, faked papers, attempted to steal from someone who'd given you shelter. She looked at her notes. Marcus Wilson, 15 months supervised probation, 150 hours community service, $12,000 fine, $40,000 payment. Diane Wilson, 18 months probation, 200 hours community service, $20,000 fine, $40,000 payment, 3-year ban from real estate deals. The gavel came down. I walked out without looking back. On the courthouse steps, Mrs. Patterson waited. Justice won. As it always does. Sometimes it just needs help. What's next? Volunteer work, legal advice for seniors, making sure this doesn't happen to someone else. I drove home through familiar Scottsdale streets, past landmarks that had become chapters in this story. The bank, Stone's office, the escrow building where everything collapsed. In my driveway I sat quietly before getting out. 30 years as a principal. Never thought my own daughter would stand where criminals stood. She'd had every advantage. Education, support, honesty modeled daily. She chose greed instead. Chosen justice. That was the difference between us. Some mothers would have forgiven her, kept the relationship at any cost. But that would have made me a victim. I hadn't survived 30 years in schools by accepting victimhood. I walked to my door. New locks, empty rooms, peace restored. Would Diane contact me again? Probably not. I'd lost my daughter. It hurt. It would always hurt. But I'd kept my dignity, my home, my self-respect. Justice isn't always kind, but it's always right. I made coffee and opened my laptop to research volunteer legal programs for seniors, transforming pain into purpose, turning betrayal into protection for those more vulnerable. They tried to make me a victim. I'd refused. That refusal, that was the real victory. Some bonds are sacred. Some betrayals are unforgivable. And that's okay. The house was quiet, mine alone now. Safe, defended home. The afternoon sun streamed through the kitchen window. The same window where I'd first noticed something was wrong all those weeks ago. I poured myself a second cup of coffee and sat at my kitchen table. The same table where Marcus and Diane had sat pretending to care while plotting against me. But it felt different now. Clean somehow. Like the house itself had been freed from something dark. Mrs. Patterson called just as I was settling in. "How are you feeling?" I considered the question honestly. "Lighter. Like I can breathe again." "That's good. You did the right thing." "No. But knowing and feeling are two different things." She was quiet for a moment. "My son, the one who stole from me. He died still angry at me for catching him. Never forgave me. Never apologized. I carried that guilt for years, wondering if I should have just let it go. And now I know I did the right thing too. Still hurts, but I can live with myself. And that matters more." Her words settled something inside me. That's exactly it. I can live with myself. We talked for a few more minutes about her plans to help me with the senior legal advocacy program, then said goodbye. I sat in my kitchen in my house, surrounded by 35 years of memories. Some of those memories were tainted now. I'd never look at Diane's graduation photo the same way. Never remember her childhood without this betrayal coloring it. But the house itself remained. Solid, real mine. The doorbell rang, startling me. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole I saw a young woman, maybe 30, holding a clipboard. I opened the door cautiously. "Can I help you?" "Ms. Chen. I'm Rosa Alvarez from the County Victim Services Program. I wanted to check in, see if you needed any support resources after your case." I invited her in, offered her coffee. We sat in the living room and she walked me through various support services. Counseling, legal aid, community programs. As we talked, I found myself telling her about my idea for the senior legal advocacy program. Her eyes lit up. That's exactly what we need. Too many seniors fall victim to family fraud, and they don't know where to turn. Would you consider partnering with our office? By the time she left an hour later, we'd outlined a basic framework. Monthly workshops at the senior center. Free legal consultations. Educational materials about protecting assets. A hotline for reporting suspected elder abuse. Felt right. Taking this painful experience and turning it into something that could help others. The following weeks fell into a new rhythm. I met with Rebecca Stone to finalize the program details. Connected with David Chen, the attorney I'd mentioned to Mrs. Patterson, who agreed to volunteer his time. Reached out to the senior center director, who enthusiastically offered space for our workshops. Mrs. Patterson became my right hand, helping organize, spreading the word through her network of friends. Our first workshop was scheduled for October 15th. 6 weeks after the sentencing. The senior center's community room filled beyond our expectations. 47 people showed up. Seniors worried about their own families, about their assets, about becoming victims like I nearly had. I stood at the front of the room, looking out at all those faces, and felt something shift inside me. This was why it had all happened. Not just to teach Diane and Marcus a lesson, but to teach me that I could take the worst experience of my life and transform it into protection for others. "Good afternoon," I began. "My name is Margaret Chen, and 6 months ago my daughter and son-in-law tried to steal my house." I saw the recognition in their eyes. Some had read about the case in the local paper. Others just understood the pain of family betrayal. I spent the next hour walking them through warning signs. Changes in paperwork, missing mail, pressure to sign documents, family members asking about finances in unusual ways. Rebecca Stone covered legal protections, trusts, powers of attorney, how to verify documents. David Chen talked about what to do if you suspect fraud. By the end, several people had lined up to ask private questions. One elderly man, hands shaking, told me his son had been pressuring him to sign over his house. A woman in her 70s whispered that her grandson had stolen her credit cards. We helped each one. Made referrals, provided resources, offered guidance. This, I thought as I watched David Chen patiently explain trust law to a confused senior. This is justice too. Not just punishment but prevention. Not just consequences but protection. As people filed out, thanking us, promising to come to the next workshop, Mrs. Patterson squeezed my hand. Your daughter tried to destroy you. Instead, you've become stronger. And you're helping so many others. I looked around the emptying room, at the informational pamphlets we'd created, at the sign-up sheet full of names for next month's workshop. She didn't destroy me. She revealed me. Revealed what I'm capable of when pushed. Revealed that I'm stronger than I knew. The program grew over the following months. By December we were holding workshops twice monthly. We'd helped 32 seniors protect their assets, reported 14 cases of suspected fraud to authorities, and prevented countless others through education. The local news did a story about us. Elder fraud victim becomes advocate. They interviewed me in my living room, the same room where I'd sat through that terrible dinner with Marcus and Diane. How does it feel, the reporter asked, to turn such a painful experience into something positive? I thought carefully before answering. Doesn't erase the pain. I still lost my daughter. That grief doesn't go away. But it gives the pain meaning. It makes sure her betrayal wasn't just destruction. It became creation. Help for others, protection for the vulnerable. That feels like the right kind of justice. The story aired in January. My phone rang for days afterward. Seniors calling for help, other communities wanting to start similar programs, even a few people calling to share their own stories of family betrayal. Each call reminded me that I wasn't alone. That this problem was bigger than just me, bigger than just Diane and Marcus. It was systemic, cultural, a problem that needed addressing. By February, our program had expanded to 3 other senior centers across the county. We'd trained 15 volunteer advocates, created a comprehensive resource guide, established relationships with law enforcement specifically focused on elder fraud. One afternoon in March, nearly 8 months after the closing that never happened, I was at home preparing materials for the next workshop when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole I saw Marcus standing on my porch. Alone. My first instinct was to not answer. But curiosity won. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Marcus. His voice cracked. I wanted to say I'm sorry. The words hung between us. I'd imagined this moment dozens of times. Sometimes I saw myself slamming the door. Sometimes I saw myself breaking down. Sometimes I saw myself forgiving him. Reality was quieter than any of those fantasies. Come in, I said finally. We sat in the living room, an ocean of space between us on the couch. He looked thinner, older, worn down by consequences. I've been in therapy, he said quietly. Trying to understand how I let Diane manipulate me. How I betrayed you. I'm not making excuses. I knew what we were doing was wrong. I wanted to believe her so badly. I wanted the life she promised. I listened without interrupting. That she left you anyway. That was my karma, he said with a bitter laugh. Took the money she'd hidden and left me with nothing but debt and guilt. I've been working 2 jobs trying to pay back what I owe. I may never pay it all. But the word came out harder than I intended, but I didn't take it back. You need to understand consequences, Marcus. Real consequences. No. Do now. He looked at me, eyes red. I don't expect forgiveness, Mom. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. That I understand what I did. That if I could go back, I'd make different choices. Can I ask you something? Said. He nodded. Why? You had a good job, a decent life. Why risk everything for money? He was quiet for a long time. Fear, I think. Fear of never having enough. Fear of not measuring up. Diane fed that fear, made me believe this was our only chance. But mostly it was greed. Simple, ugly greed. The honesty in his answer was something. Not enough, but something. I can't forgive you, I said finally. Not now. Maybe not ever. What you did cut too deep. But I hope your therapy helps. I hope you learn from this. I hope you become better than you were. Tears ran down his face. That's more than I deserve. He stood to leave. At the door he turned back. One more thing. Vin. She's in trouble in California. The man she left me for, Jake, he was running a scam. She got caught up in it. She might be facing charges there too. I felt nothing at the news. No satisfaction, no pity. Just emptiness where my daughter used to live in my heart. That's her path to walk now, I said. Just like this is yours. He nodded and left. I watched through the window as he walked to his car, shoulders slumped, carrying the weight of his choices. Would I ever forgive him? I honestly didn't know. Would I ever have a relationship with Diane again? Almost certainly not. But as I returned to my workshop materials, I realized something important. I didn't need their forgiveness or reconciliation to move forward. I didn't need closure from them to find peace. I built my own peace, created my own purpose, found my own way through the pain. The program was my healing. The seniors I helped were my recovery. The justice I'd fought for was my victory. Not because it hurt them, but because it freed me. 3 years later, on a warm October afternoon, I stood in the county building receiving an award. The Senior Advocacy Excellence Award for Outstanding Service to the Elderly Community. Mrs. Patterson sat in the front row, beaming. Rebecca Stone and David Chen sat beside her. The room was filled with seniors we'd helped, volunteers who'd joined our cause, officials who'd partnered with us. The county supervisor read the citation. Margaret Chen transformed personal tragedy into community triumph. Her elder protection program has helped over 500 seniors protect their assets, prevented millions of dollars in fraud, and created a model being replicated across the state. But more than the numbers, she's given seniors their voice back, their dignity back, their power back. As I accepted the award, I looked out at all those faces, all those lives touched, all that good created from something so painful. I thought about that afternoon 3 years ago when I'd first noticed my recipe box had been tampered with. If someone had told me then where that discovery would lead, I never would have believed them. Not just the betrayal but the transformation. Not just the loss but the gain. Thank you, I said simply. They say when one door closes, another opens. My daughter tried to close the door on my life, on my independence, on my dignity. Instead, she opened a door to purpose I never knew I had. To strength I never knew I possessed. To a community of people who needed help that I was uniquely qualified to give. I can't say I'm grateful for what happened. The wound is still there, will always be there. But I'm grateful for what I became because of it. For choosing justice over victimhood. Evidence over emotion. Action over acceptance. If you're facing betrayal, especially from family, know this. You are stronger than you know. You have more power than they want you to believe. And on the other side of your pain is purpose, if you're brave enough to find it. The applause filled the room. Later at the reception, a young woman approached me. Ms. Chen, I'm a reporter with the Arizona Republic. I'd love to do a feature story about your journey. From victim to advocate. I considered it, then nodded. But make sure you include resources in the article. Helpline numbers, warning signs, legal aid information. This isn't about me. It's about making sure what happened to me doesn't happen to others. She smiled and agreed. The story ran 2 weeks later. Front page of the local section. The photo showed me at the senior center, surrounded by smiling elderly faces. The headline read, "How One Woman's Worst Day Became Her Greatest Mission." My phone rang that evening. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello, Mom." The voice was hesitant, broken. It was Diane. I said nothing, just waited. I saw the article. I needed to call. "I'm in prison, Mom. California. 3 years for fraud. I'm halfway through." Still I said nothing. I was wrong. About everything. I threw away our relationship, betrayed you, destroyed my marriage, All for money I lost anyway. I've had a lot of time to think in here. About what I did. Who I became. Took a breath. Why are you calling, Diane? 'Cause I'm sorry. 'Cause I was wrong. 'Cause I miss you. The words I'd once longed to hear now felt empty. Too late and too hollow. I'm glad you've had time to think, I said finally. I hope you use the rest of your sentence to become someone better. But I can't give you forgiveness. I can't give you absolution. You'll have to find that yourself. Mom, please. Have to go now, Diane. I wish you the best with your rehabilitation. I hung up before she could respond. Mrs. Patterson, who'd been sitting with me when the call came, looked at me with concern. Are you okay? I thought about it honestly. Him. That needed to happen, I think. She needed to apologize. I needed to hear it and realize it doesn't change anything. The wound is too deep. Some things can't be fixed. She nodded. Some betrayals are unforgivable. And that's okay. The months rolled into years. The program continued growing. We expanded to elder financial abuse, medical fraud, identity theft. Trained hundreds of volunteers. Helped thousands of seniors. Changed laws at the state level to strengthen protections. I retired from active involvement at 70, but stayed on as an advisor. Mrs. Patterson took over day-to-day operations, and the program thrived under her leadership. On my 70th birthday, the senior center threw a surprise party. The room overflowed with people whose lives I'd touched. Seniors I'd helped, volunteers I'd trained, officials I'd worked with. Rebecca Stone made a toast. Margaret taught us that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about protection. It's not just about looking back at what was taken, but looking forward to what can be built. She took the worst thing that ever happened to her and turned it into the best thing that happened to all of us. As I blew out the candles, surrounded by this community I'd built from the ashes of betrayal, I finally felt it. Real deep lasting peace. Not because I'd forgiven Diane. I hadn't. Not because the pain had disappeared. It hadn't. But because I'd proven something to myself. That I was more than what was done to me. That I could transform pain into purpose. That I could take the weapon used against me and forge it into a shield for others. That night, alone in my house, the same house Diane had tried to steal, I wrote in my journal. Today I turned 70. 45 years I've lived in this house. Raised my daughter here, buried my husband from here, nearly lost it all here. But it's still mine. Still standing. Still home. Diane got out of prison last month. She didn't contact me. I'm grateful for that. Some distances are necessary. Some separations are healthy. Marcus sends a card every year on my birthday. Brief messages of continued apology and growth. I acknowledge them but don't encourage more. Some wounds heal better with space. The program I started is now in 23 counties across Arizona. We've prevented an estimated $15 million in elder fraud. Helped over 2,000 seniors protect their assets. Trained 400 volunteers. Influenced 6 pieces of state legislation. But more than the numbers, I think about individual faces. The man who would have lost his house to his son but didn't because of our workshop. The woman who caught her grandson stealing early enough to stop him. The senior who came to us confused and left empowered. Those faces are my legacy. Not the house, not the money, not even the justice against Diane and Marcus. The faces of people I helped. That's what I built from betrayal. As I closed my journal and turned off the light, I realized something profound. Diane thought she was taking everything from me. Instead, she gave me the greatest gift of my life, the opportunity to discover who I really was, what I was truly capable of, and what my real purpose had always been. She wanted to erase me. Instead, she revealed me. And in the end, that was the greatest justice of all. The house was quiet now, peaceful in a way it hadn't been in years. Mine alone but not lonely. Because I'd filled my life with purpose. My days with meaning, my heart with the knowledge that from the deepest pain can come the greatest good. If you've been betrayed, especially by family, know this. You will survive. You will heal. And if you're brave enough, you'll transform. The wound becomes wisdom. The pain becomes purpose. The betrayal becomes your greatest teacher. I thought I was just protecting my house. Instead, I discovered my calling. I thought I was just seeking justice. Instead, I found meaning. I thought I was just surviving betrayal. Instead, I learned to thrive because of it. That's the real ending to this story. Not revenge, not punishment, not even forgiveness. Transformation. From victim to advocate. From wounded to healer. From destroyed to creator. They tried to take my house. Instead, I built a movement. And that, in the end, is the sweetest justice of all. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to Granny's Voice, and share your thoughts in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Remember, your story doesn't end with betrayal. Begins there.